Hello. Okay. A lot of issues, so hopefully they are resolved somewhat. We'll see. Okay. I'm Elizabeth. Thank you for joining me. Today we are going to be making some super cute glow in the dark bracelets just in time for Halloween. Aren't they cute? You'll be able to see them a little better when we flip the camera, which you can go ahead and do now, Chanel. So here we go. We are making, we'll see if them. So we are going to make this little bracelet. I chose the orange and purple beads, and then I made it say boo. And then I found these cute little charms a while back at Michael's, but I don't know if you can get them anymore. So if you can't, they have so many other cute things. If not, I know Creatology has these adorable candy charms, and that's what I used on the other bracelet. And then this bracelet says trick or treat. So I've started pulling some of my letters, but I'm going to go ahead and go over my supplies with you first, okay? So if you have all of your supplies gathered, you can get a head start by pulling out your letters to make them spell trick or treat. And then I'm just going to pull up here. Okay, so get my glasses. Okay, so you can, if you wouldn't mind tagging, or your adult, if your adult would tag us at Learn with Michaels on Instagram and tag me at La Cozy Casita. I love to see your finished product. Last week we did slime. It was so fun to see your pictures come in. I loved it, loved it. So, and then I love sharing it on my page as well. So if it's okay with your adult, I would love to see your project. Okay, so we are going to use this cute glow in the dark bead set. And if you took my mermaid class, it was my very first one. It's the same kit. So it has all these glow in the dark charms. Some glow in the dark or beads, some do not. I'm pretty sure the letters do too. So you're going to grab this kit. And then your Creatology candy charms, because how perfect for trick or treat, right? And then I have these, they didn't make it into the supply list. Somehow it got missed, but I did have somebody add these charms just a few days ago. And if you don't have the charms, don't worry, you can add. Then let's see. Oh, elastic cording. So if you are out of elastic cording from your kit, which I still have enough probably for 2 bracelets in here, I am just some elastic cording, any kind of Chanel, no, let us know in the Q&A how old you are and where you're from. I love to read that. And then I'm going to work on getting my trick or treat out. I have to say scissors, of course. You need scissors to cut your cording. And I just had mine. Let me see if I can find mine. And glue. The reason we use this glue, and this is just Creatology glitter, and reason you can use regular school glue, but the reason why we use that is so your bracelets won't come unraveled. It just kind of helps with that. So there they are. Some scissors. All right. So we've got the cording, scissors, beads, charms. I love sometimes just to put the beads in. That's helpful. So I'm going to look for my letters for trick or treat. T-I-C-K-O-R and T-R-E-A. I'll zoom in just in case you're not sure how to spell trick or treat. I'll zoom in a little bit for you. Yeah. That way you can pull yours out too. Just let it come into focus here. If it will, I don't know if it's going to, but you know what? I bet Chanel wouldn't mind writing that in the Q&A for us, or wherever you write your information, Chanel. Or it might get buried. I don't know what the best thing. Maybe I could just write it on a card. Let's see. I'm going to write trick or treat out for you. And boo. So you could find these letters. T. I'm going to put all capital because all of these are capital letters. T-R-I-C-K. And then it's going to be or. And then treat. T-R-E-A-T. And then the next one is going to be boo. Okay. So those are the letters you're going to grab. That's probably a little easier than seeing it on the beads. So trick or treat and boo. So I've got my trick where. So you're going to look for those. I thought this would be so cute with those stacky bracelets. So when you trick on the dark bracelets, so then you're just kind of stacking all of these together with the glow in the dark. You know, those little pop bracelets that I'm talking about. So they don't glow in the dark until you pop them and then they glow in the dark. I think that would be so cute together because these are all kind of the same colors. Here's another R.
Elizabeth, I'm just going to interrupt you really quick. We did have a bunch of people who put in their ages and where they're tuning in from in the Q&A. But I was kicked out of the Zoom class and now I don't see those anymore. So if you can put those back in the Q&A, I'll read them off to Elizabeth.
Oh, I have some.
Oh, good.
Mina is 8. We are a troop of 4th grade Girl Scouts from Metro Atlanta, Georgia. That is so fun. Welcome. Wow. What badge are you girls working towards? The crafting badge? That's so fun. Oh no, is it Maryland MD? 9 from Maryland. 7, Minnesota. Leah, 5.5. Alani, what a beautiful name. 11 years old from South Carolina. We are logging in from Georgia. A 5, an 8, and a 13-year-old. How fun. You can see now. 7 from Minnesota. Sophie, 10, St. George, Utah. Natalie, Genevieve, both 8. And Charlotte, 11, from St. Louis. Oh, we're earning the jeweler badge. Braylyn, age 9, from Washington, D.C. Ooh, that was fun, Chanel. I never get to do your job. That was like a little present I got to unwrap. So if anybody else would chime in, that is so fun. It makes me feel like, Chanel, doesn't it make it feel like it's just not you and I in the class when they do that?
Yes.
It really
because we're the only ones that can have the cameras on sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Let's see, here's an E, T-R-E-A. I'm almost there. How are you girls doing? Or guys, there's some joining us. Let's see, T. So trick, treat, got it. Okay, boo, B-O-O. And there. Because it'd be silly to put back after I just pulled them out and knew that there was. That's why I'm kind of putting them in here. B-O-O. So my son is a Boy Scout. all the badges. He's going on a backpacking trip this weekend. He had a big fundraiser last week. Ooh, here's an O. So you Girl Scouts are doing some amazing things. Good job. Oh, I found it. I love these colors so much. Okay. I got it. All right. If you don't have all of your colors yet, don't worry. You could even, why don't I, that's the quickest one to make. And that way, when I am working on beading, chit-chatting with you, and you can get caught up, you can be pulling your trick or treat letters. How's that sound? So let's get started on our boo. And if we have anybody else, did we have anybody else, chime in?
What was the last one that you read off? Do you remember?
Oh, it was Braylin.
Okay. We have a kindergarten from Pennsylvania, Kalila 9 from Texas, Maddie 9, Marlo 5 from Crofton, Maryland. We have a 6, 8, and 13-year-old from Atlanta, Nora 6, and Elena 3. And Abby says she's doing good, and this is so fun.
Yay, I think this is so much. I just really look forward to this all along. Okie dokes. So hold that back so we can get rocking and rolling. You ready? Okay, I'm going to space. I guess I'll stay since it's okay. There we go. All right, so I told you we would work on the boob. So cute, and I'm so sad, but you can add those later. Okay, so you're gonna grab, I'm gonna grab purple. If you have color you want, it's your choice. I 13 inches. I go 13 inches because I want to be able to have enough room to tie the end. Okay. So your wrist is much smaller than mine. My opinion, I think it's better to go longer than shorter, because what you don't want to happen is after you've beaded everything that you don't have enough room to tie your knot, and that's the pits. So just go, I would say, I'd say 13. I'm trying to find, usually I have a little, I thought I had it out somewhere, but maybe not. So I thought I had a little, I like to do 13. So it depends. My 3-year-old, you might want to do 10 inches. Your wrist is going to be much, much smaller. Okay. But when in doubt, go long. Okay. So you have elastic. Move this right here. This is my ruler. It's kind of already on my table here. Okay. I'm going to show you what to do if you don't have a ruler too. Okay. So if you don't have a ruler, first, here's your elastic. Okay. If yours is, so this is the one that came in the kit. It's a little bit stretchy, but what I want to tell you is to make sure you're not stretching it as you're measuring. Okay. Keep it loose as you measure. So, if you're with a buddy, you could help your buddy measure around your wrist, okay? I would go further out on your wrist, okay? Don't just come right here and say, okay, this is exact, cut it right there, because you've got to think your beads are going to take up space and your knots, okay? So I'm going to show you what 13 looks like on my wrist. Now, remember, I'm not stretching. Don't stretch out your string, leave it loose. So I'm just holding one end at the 0, and I'm just kind of guiding to the 13. So here's my 13. Again, that's going to be pretty big for some of you. And then you just kind of loosely, so see how much space I have? And even that could be tricky at points. So go looser than you think, okay? It's always better to go longer than too short. All right, so there we go. All right. Now, if you have tape handy, you can tape your end to your mat. And then that way, the bottom of your string will stay still, okay? And if you lift on accident, your beads won't come flying off. If you do not have tape, you can tie a knot around your finger, okay? So I'm going to show you how to do that. I realize we have a Girl Scout troop, so there's probably only so many adults. So I'm going to show you how to tie that around your finger, okay? Unless you have tape, go for the tape. Okay, so you're going to point your finger like, hey, you, I know you. Point, hold on with your thumb, and then wrap, 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 wrap. Don't pull tight. Just one time. Did you see what I did? I'm going to do it again. Eyes up here. Here we go. Thumb, wrap, just one time. Okay. Now this little end, the little guy, not the long one, the little end, you have to get under. Okay. Tuck it through. Kind of like you tie your shoes, And then scooch that knot. You don't want to go this way with your knot. Okay, you want to scooch it towards the end. Elastics. There we go. See, it looks like a little tiny pretzel. Until it unfreezes. Finger patience. There we go. Tiny little knot. Tight. I'm going to go double whammy. I'm going to tape my end. Okay. Double whammy. Just because since I'm teaching, sometimes, I get carried away and then things can go. Okay. I'm going to take trick or treat away. Okay, guys. I'm going to slide it away because I need my mat now. And I'm going to put in my little dish. Take this away. Okay. Hopefully you got trick or treat down. Okay, tape the end. You have it where you put your knot. Do not have it. It's okay. We put the knot there, all right? It's extra. I just like to. All righty. We are going to use our purple. I've got big purple, whichever one you want to use. Okay. Use little purples. If you want to use big purple, use big purple. Since I use big purples on this one, I'm going to change it up. You know what? It would even be cute. The purple stars. Orange with the purple stars. That would be so adorable. You choose what you want to do. All right. So my pattern here is 2 orange, 1 purple. or you could start it here. Purple, orange, orange, purple, orange, orange, purple, orange, orange, purple, orange, orange, purple, orange, orange. Okay, so you know what? I changed purple, orange, orange. So you'll see, so my 3-year-old, there's a little tiny hole. You're going to put your string through that tiny hole, and then out it comes right here. Look, out it popped. See? You're going to make sure that it goes all the way through, and then let it fall all the way into your tape. Chanel, we're missing our 16-year-old. Is it 16 or is she 14? We usually have a friend who joins us who's a teen, and I always love hearing that she's on.
Yeah, she's 16, I believe.
16. Yeah. She must be busy tonight. Okay. Ooh, I love the purple star. So cute. I wonder what you all are doing. You can do the exact same thing that I'm doing if you want. You can do the exact same thing of this pattern here, or you can make your very own pattern. Okay. Sometimes it's just fun to creating together, isn't it? Purple, orange, orange. Okay. If you get to where the end of your string is starting to, it's okay right now. But if it starts to fray, that means it's not like a sharp point. Those threads are coming out, and then it's harder to thread onto your bead. All you have to do is take your scissors and just take off the tiniest bit. It's like giving a haircut, just a tiny bit. Don't cut down here. That'd be bad bears, because then you'd run out of string. So just the tiny bit, give them a little haircut, a teeny tiny haircut. All right. I would like to stop here. So I'm finishing my pattern here. Let me get a star. If you don't have this much done yet, no worries. You can stop wherever you are. Just finish your pattern. So if you have star, orange, orange, purple star, orange, orange, purple star, orange, orange, purple star, orange, orange, purple star. This is where I want to stop because I want to put my letters on. If you only got this much done, that's okay. You can still put your star, you can still put your letters on, because this is going to make a bracelet and it just goes all around a circle. So you really don't know where you start or you begin. So it doesn't even matter where you're putting your letters. Okay. So I would just say, stop your wherever you finished your pattern, go ahead and stop, and let's put boo on. So we're going to put E. Oh, wait, we've got to go backwards. Put O. Is that right? We go backwards. I might have to give him a haircut. He got in. See, I'm going backwards, and then another O. Well, I guess it really doesn't matter, because then if it's upside down, it's fine. You just turn the bracelet around. Silly me. Okay, let me give him a haircut. Did I do it right? Yeah, I did. Did I? Now my brain is playing tricks on me. B-O-O. There. Okay. Yeah. Put it backwards, right? Yeah, there we go. Okay. So you string it on backwards, and then you're going to get the word boo. Okay. So it's backwards day. Now I'm going to, just because this is how I want to do it, if you don't want to do it this way, it's totally okay, because guess who owns this bracelet? You do. So you can do it however you want. But I'm going to put a star because I just kind of want the stars to be around my letters. And now I'm going orange, orange. Orange. And orange. And then another star. And then orange and orange again. How are we looking? I bet it is a party with the Girl Scouts. How fun. I would have loved to be in the Girl Scouts when I was little. I was not. I did go to one Girl Scout event, I remember. And we made candy cane cookies. So we took dough and we colored it red and white. And then we twisted the dough. Isn't it crazy how I remember this? And I was like 9. And so we took we rolled out the dough, we took the 2 parts, and then we kind of twisted them together. And then we made them into candy cane and we baked them. And it was like the time of my life. It's so much fun, which is why I love baking and cooking now, probably. Okay, let me put 1 star. And I think I'm going to be ready to go ahead and tie it off. So yours does not have to be this long. Remember, I have an adult wrist and you have a kid wrist. So you might have even stopped out. If you did this pattern, you stopped at 6 stars. Okay. All right. To tie off. So I want to ends together like this. Okay. Oops, I froze. There we go. All right. I've got my 2 ends. Sorry about the connectivity. Something's up and we don't know what, but it's not the bandwidth. It just started. I worked on it for about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. So I hope next class will not be, but I promise you I'm working on it. I apologize. I don't know what is going on. All right. So as long as it lagging, I apologize. These are 2 ends. And you're going to, and then in goes. Right? So you crisscross, you make an X, and it gets done. Just like that. Okay. So you kind of pull it a little tighter. Okay. Not tight, really tight, not pulling it tight. Just kind of gathered it together. So there's a difference between gathering and pulling so tight. Okay. Don't need to. All right. Now I'm going to cross again. But this time, I'm going to go through 2 times. That is called a surgeon's knot. So I'm going to show you again. Cross. Go through once. Go through twice. Now, pull it together. And this is the part where you're going to pull it a little tighter. So what I like to do is hold on to the ends here with my other fingers underneath so I can kind of So it's not stretching the elastic too much, but I'm getting a tighter pull. Okay. Just like that. So I am going to undo mine because I know usually this is the hardest part of the class. And somebody asks me to show you one more time. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay. You don't have to undo yours because you probably did it right. I just want to show my friends who maybe weren't quite ready. And then if I'm going too fast for you and you're still working, don't worry, keep working, because remember, this is going to be posted on YouTube tomorrow. So even if you just get the one bracelet done, you can always watch tomorrow to get the trick or treat bracelet. Okay. All right. I'm going to show you. We're doing good on time though. All right, here we go. So you have your two ends. All of the beads are down. Okay. I don't have any spaces between my beads. They're all together. All right. Now cross. Just like you do with your shoes. Make an X. One goes under. And then gently pull, just so your beads come together. Now, I'm going to do it again. Cross. But remember, this is the part that's a little bit different. You're going to go through once and go through another time. Go through the hole a second time. There we go. See, it looks like a twist. Now pull it. Okay. Now I'm going to grab onto my beads. This might be tricky for my younger friends, but for my adults, this is kind of what I like to do. I just grab onto the beads just to give it a nicer tug here. There we go. Okay. All right. Now that you have that, I'm going to grab this here. Grab your glue and you're going to put the tiny dab of glue on your knot. And I have a saying for glue, and it's a little dab will do ya. You don't need a whole bunch of glue. You don't know. That's not necessary. You just need a little dab. Little dab will do ya. I always like to kind of get my glue started over here on the paper, but you know how ketchup will do that to you. And then you have a big splatter of ketchup all over your hot dog. So I like to get it going. Sometimes it dries, which it is today. I just have this little pick. You could use a skewer. You could use a toothpick. I have this little thing that I used for when I was sculpting mini foods. That one was a super fun class. Just barely stretching. Oh, there. I'm just barely moving these beads out of the way. Okay. Just barely move your beads out of the way and give the tiniest little dot, just a little dab will do ya. You don't want a whole clump of glue. And I'm just I'm not right. Now, if you don't have glue with you right now, don't worry, you can always do this later. The only thing I would say is when you're going to put your bracelet on, don't let it stretch out too much. Okay, you want to have this reinforcement on there. Okay, so once my glue dries, just let it sit overnight. And snip these ends off, glue dry. I'm gonna let it catch up. There we go. So here's the ends. Clip it later, not okay. All right. So bracelet is done. Oh, I forgot. if you wanted to put the little charms on, you would grab your two little tools here, because these came from the adult section of beads. So just in case there's some people out there with this, because you may have looked at the picture on the app and you may have just found them on your own. So I do want to show how to do that in the case that you did buy these. If you didn't, just take this time to catch up. Okay. If you have these are just the little clasps. Okay. But these are the from, and they have a jump ring on them. So I want to show you, if you brought, excuse me, the jump ring, excuse my sneeze. Okay. Let's put a spider. So this kit came with jack-o'-lantern, a skull, a spider, maybe one more thing, but I'm not sure what, I can't remember what it was. So I'm going to show you how to attach this charm onto your bracelet. I would certainly be scared if there was a spider like this. Okay, look very carefully at the jump ring. There is a little space here. I'm going to show you. There's the tiniest little space, and that's where it comes together. It may not pick it up here. Okay, so it may not be picking it up. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab one of these little tools and hold on to this side. You're going to grab this tool and hold it on this side. So one on the right and one on the left. Now, resist the temptation to pull. You're not pulling it apart. What you're doing instead, so if this is the ring, okay, well, let me see. If these are your tools here, you have the temptation to pull these apart, the rings apart. You just have the temptation to pull it like that. But the trick is to move one forward and one backwards like this, okay? And then that way you can get it put back together easier by just bringing it forward and backwards again, okay? So don't pull, resist that temptation. We're moving one part back and one part forward. Then we're putting it on the bracelet and then we're moving it back again, okay? So here we go. Grabbing, making sure that opening is at the top. I've got one side and I'm going to grab both sides, one forward, one back. I used to make jewelry all the time. I loved metal stamps. And I feel like that was probably 10 years ago. So I just got to say, my eyes are not what they used to be. I'm going to have to be one of those people that uses like a magnifying glass or go to the eye doctor. There we go. Okay, so can you see how it's separated now? And you don't even have to go that far if you didn't want to. See that? Okay, so now all I'm going to do is put it on my bracelet. So just put it around like that. And now grab the two ends. Now remember, we're not putting them together. We're bringing them this way, back and forth again. Not pulling out and in. We're going back and forth. Voila. And there we go. Isn't that so cute? So cute. He's not as scary on the cute little bracelet now, is he? All right, I'm gonna clip this just so you can see the finished product. But remember what I said, wait till it's dry. Or I know you're gonna be excited to wear them. Just be careful when you put it on, okay? Don't stretch it so much that it's gonna pop. Isn't that cute? I love it. So cute, cute, cute. All right, let's do trick or treat. Just enough time. All right, so we're going to get our elastic again. I'm going to do 14 inches this time. Okay, so get your elastic band. And there we go. 14 inches is what I'm going for this time. Okay, 14. You can do 13, you can do 12. Remember, it's better to go bigger than too small. All right, we're doing trick or treat. So here is the trick or treat bracelet. Here it is. Trick. And then I had 2 stars and I put or in the middle and then treat. And then I just use little bubbles. You can, the bubble beads, you can use whatever you want. Okay. So let's get started. Remember, you can put a knot at the end of your elastic just by holding onto one end, wrapping it around one time, and then tucking this little guy, and that's on my finger, and just slide it down to the end. If you have tape, you don't have to do this part. If you have tape, just tape it on the end. Just tape. It skips a whole step. All right. There we go. Okay, let's get going. So why don't we start with, let's do 2 oranges. Now, again, you can do your own, or you can make the bracelet that I made. I'm going to do 4 orange beads first. So I'll do 2. And this is kind of where I'm going to put my knot. Oops, I'm out of the frame. There we go. So I'm just going to put 2 beads. So I'm right here. All right, I'm going to move my spider one away now. All right, so there's my 2 beads. Now I'm going to go for big purple, big white. Big purple and big white. So I've got my 2 oranges and I've got big purple and big white. There we go.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Yes.
What is the string that you are using? What's it called? Or what is the brand?
This is Creatology and it's called Elastic Cord. And it just comes just like this. I have one that's all white. I like this because it is elasticy. I really like this one, but I haven't been able to find this one yet. This one's my favorite. And this is a clear, but you really truly can use anything. I have used even butcher's twine before. That's just my favorite one. Okay, so there we go. We've got 2 orange, 1 purple, 1 white. Now we are going to spell trick or treat, and we're going to spell it backwards. So we've got to start with our T. So put your T on. Remember, we're going backwards. Then I'm going to go for the A. Remember, we're going this way. So I'm going to put an arrow here so you know. We're going this way. This is opposite than how we read, isn't it? That's the direction we're going. So we've got T, and now I've got my A. Get in there, little guy. Oh, you know what I forgot to put on the list? A toothpick, just in case these are clogged, because a toothpick Works wonders. Now we're on E. Now remember, if you need to give your little guy a haircut, you can. If it gets too frayed, just give him a little trim.
Can you explain again why we're going backwards with the letters?
Because if we put them on in the right direction, they're going to be backwards on the bracelet. At least that's what I think. Yeah. So go backwards this way so you can read it the right way. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you got to stack it backwards. Because we're going back to up. You know, sometimes you have to make your brain work backwards. And then you question yourself. But I'm pretty sure I did this the other way. I mean, someone tell me if I'm wrong, please, in the comments. And then I'll save myself this trouble. But I thought I did it, spelled it all the right way, and then it was all backwards. And then a T. Oop, I need to trim it. There we go. Okay. So between my words, trick or treat, I'm putting these little stars. So I'm grabbing a white star. And then I'm going to spell or, O-R, or R-O. Then another star. I'm choosing the white stars. You can choose whichever one you like. I think I chose the white ones just so you could read the words a little better. I really don't think it matters though. And now we're doing trick. So you start with K. And then C. And then I, let me check the time, we're doing good. Oop, time for a trim. See how I just took the tiniest bit off? There we go. R. And then T. Now, if you wanted, you could put another star. I'm just going to go right to the rest of the beads because look, trick or treat is such a long word. It's making your bracelet pretty big, right? So if you were making my 3-year-old, you might not need all these beads. You might need less because your wrist is so much smaller. I'm going to go with the white bead. I'm going to go with the purple bead. And let's see, we're getting pretty big. Yeah, I'm okay. Okay, and then 2 oranges. One and 2. There we go. Now we get to tie it. And if you're still working, don't worry. You can keep on keeping on. Okay? Just keep on keeping on. But I'm going to be super careful when I lift this up. Because some of you might not have a knot and you don't want to lose all your strings. But if you do lose your strings, do not worry. no worries. Just restring it. Okay. When I taught my very first class for Michael's, I lost my beads. And it was the pits. Okay. So are you ready to string? Are you ready to tie your knots? Here we go. We're going to go crisscross. And then you're going to tuck under. Remember, just like your shoes, just like you tie your shoes. Gently bring your beads together, but not tight. Crisscross again. Whoopsies, got caught on my beads here. Let me do that again. So crisscross, tuck under, pull your beads together, and don't pull too tight. Everybody good? Okay, we're going to cross again, make an X, and tuck under. Now remember what we do for our surgeon's knot, we have to tuck twice. These orange beads keep getting in the way. Okay, here we go. Tuck. And go around one more time. See, it looks like a bunch of twists. Now, pull that together. Don't pull too tightly. It's the Goldilocks effect. Just right. So I like to grab these beads and give it a pull. There we go. Okay, now grab your glue. Put your little dab of glue, a little dab will do ya. Spread this out. Give a little dab. And then I'm just going to use the end of my bottle to spread it around. I did more than a little dab. Okay, let that dry. Now you can put your cutie little charms on. Look at how cute these charms are. I love them so much. If you have not been to Michael's to see their charm section, they are the best. So anytime I get a chance to put charms on something, I am. They have cute like lollipops I saw today, gumball machines. That one's my favorite one. They have school, like you could put school colors, says cheer on them. There's a football, there's a basketball, all kinds of fun things. All right, so this is how you open this clasp. This one's so much easier than last. You don't need any tools for this one. All you have to do, for those of you who have never seen this kind of clasp before, it's called a clasp. You're just going to grab this little part right here. Pull it. And then it opens. Sometimes if you use your thumb, that's even better. So you just kind of have to balance it. It's a little chunky, so it might be tricky, or it might be easier for you because you have smaller hands. Okay, so you're just opening it and then you're putting that on, you're putting your bracelet right on it. Okay, so it's open. And then I'm just going to put it wherever. You can put it wherever you want. It doesn't matter. And then I let go. Isn't that cute? I'm going to clip mine. I wouldn't clip yours quite yet. There we go. And then once it dries, I'll get it even closer, but I don't want to get glue on my scissors here. So there we go. You could even put the blue one if you wanted. I chose the purple one because I feel like purple's more Halloween, but I'll add this blue one just so you could see it. So cute. These are so fun. Lena and I have been making, Lena's my daughter, and she's been making bracelets because she wants to go to the Taylor Swift movie. And I guess they're trading all kinds of bracelets. So she's been having fun making the bracelets. Well, if I could ever get this one open, I think you friends with smaller fingers would do better at this than me. My fingers are bigger. There we have it. Okay, so we've run out of time, but here is the third one. And all I did was just, I didn't really do much of a pattern. It was heart, star, heart, star, heart, star, heart, star, and you can do any color. But we got the Halloween ones done. Okay, so we made our trick or treat and we made our boo bracelets. So fun. I want to see what you made. So I would love it if you would share with me. Let me see your beautiful creations. If it's okay with your adult, of course, only if it's okay with your adult. All right. There we have it. Okay. Chanel, I think we're ready to get switched to the overhead camera. There we are. Okay, guys, thank you for joining me. I hope you had a great time. I know I did. I absolutely love creating, and I love creating with you. Sometimes this can be a little tricky for friends who have never made jewelry before, and I'm super, super proud of you if you tried something hard today. Good job. And if this was super easy for you, I bet you were a good helper to your neighbor, and I thank you for that as well. And I really hope you'll join me next week where we are making itsy bitsy spiders. So cute out of these little pipe cleaners, little tiny spiders, and a big spider web. So I'm really excited for that, just in time for trick-or-treating. I hope that you love your little stack bracelets. Remember what I said, you could use them with those glow-in-the-dark bracelets. It'll be so cute. You'll be like so fancy. And also have the best time trick-or-treating and make sure that you are wearing your glow-in-the-dark stuff. All right, you guys, thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week.